Welcome to a place where hearts unwind, infinite threads that gently bind, love and compassion in every line. Together we rise through space and time.
Hey, welcome to Infinite Threads. I'm your host, Bob. When people begin trying to live with more love and compassion in their daily lives, something interesting often happens. They discover it isn't always easy. Surprise, right? At first, the idea sounds simple. Be kind, be patient, try to see the humanity in others, try to respond with understanding instead of anger. And in quiet moments, that seems completely reasonable. But then life begins to test it. Someone interrupts you when you're already stressed. Someone misreads your intentions. Someone reacts with hostility when you were genuinely trying to be kind. And suddenly, that calm, compassionate mindset you had earlier feels much harder to hold on to. This is the moment many people quietly struggle with, because we often imagine compassion as something soft and effortless, something that flows naturally when the environment around us is peaceful and cooperative. But real compassion reveals its strength in a very different setting. It shows itself when patience would be easier to abandon, when understanding would be easier to replace with judgment, when the emotional temperature of a moment rises and every instinct inside you wants to react quickly to defend yourself. That's when the real work begins. Not because compassion is weak by any means, but because compassion requires something most of us were never really taught to practice, and that's emotional steadiness. When someone speaks harshly to us, our nervous system reacts almost instantly. The body prepares for conflict. The mind begins assembling arguments. Words rush forward, ready to defend our dignity or prove a point. In those moments, responding with love can feel almost unnatural. But the truth is that compassion doesn't ask us to ignore what we're feeling. It simply asks us to slow down long enough to choose our response, to notice the surge of emotion and allow it to pass through us before we act on it. And when we begin practicing that pause, something important becomes visible. Many difficult interactions are not really about us. They're about the storms moving through the other person. A person who feels unheard may speak louder. A person who feels threatened may become defensive. A person who feels overwhelmed may lash out without meaning to. Again, this doesn't mean harmful behavior should be accepted or ignored. Boundaries are still an essential part of living a healthy life. But understanding the emotional currents behind someone's reactions can change how we meet that moment. Instead of escalating the tension, we find ourselves lowering it. Instead of mirroring frustration, we may offer steadiness. And something remarkable often happens when someone introduces calm into an emotionally heated moment. The entire atmosphere shifts. It doesn't always transform the situation immediately. Some people remain upset. Some conversations still end in disagreement. But the cycle of escalating hostility has been interrupted. And sometimes that interruption is enough to open a new path forward. Over time, practicing this kind of compassion begins to change something inside of us. We become less reactive, less pulled into every emotional storm that passes through the room. We begin to recognize that not every sharp word requires a sharp reply. Not every misunderstanding requires a battle to correct it. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply patience. Not passive patience, but grounded patience. The kind that comes from remembering that every person we meet is navigating their own complicated landscape of fears, pressures, and past experiences. And once you begin seeing the world this way, compassion stops feeling like a burden. It starts feeling like strength. Because the person who can remain steady when emotions are running high has a kind of power that anger alone can never provide. The power to calm a moment instead of inflaming it. The power to hold on to their humanity even when someone else temporarily loses theirs. The power to keep the thread intact when tension threatens to tear it. And perhaps that's one of the quiet truths we discover along the path of practicing love. Compassion is not always easy. But the more we practice it, the more it reveals itself for what it truly is. Not weakness, but one of the deepest forms of strength a human being can possess. I mean, you've heard yourself say, it's too hard to forgive, it's too hard to do it. You're saying it's too hard, so that means it takes a strength to actually do those things. Change your way of looking at this. Thank you all very much. I love you very much, very, very much, and you know what I need you to do? Go out and pass that on, okay? Later, Gators. Bye-bye.